I'd like to show how I make a picture book. So people often ask what comes first. Do the pictures come first or the text if you're both author and illustrator? And in my case, I do have an image in my mind and I often have tiny little sketches, but I like to get down the first draft of the text. So I make up a blank dummy book of 32 pages. You see I'm using post-its. The advantage of post-its is that they are quite small, so you're keeping the word count down. And also, by sticking one on top of the other, you've got all your drafts there, so your very early drafts. So you can play around with them. You can also move them from page to page. You're working out the dynamic of the book. You're working out the page turns. For example, the page where it says Dubbin is getting closer and closer until, and then you turn the page, rather than have until on that page where you would have lost the tension. So the page turn holds the tension, and this is what you're working out in this little book. I'm using the 32 pages as a separate-ended book, where on page 1 you have the half title, on page 2, 3 you have copyright and the title page, and you start your story on page 4, 5. Then you go through 14 spreads right through to page 32 at the end, which is a half page. Now often this is a nice place to have just an image. It's like you could have a little twist on page 32 because your story has arrived and that's the final image. Now I am trying to integrate the images with the text. So I do a layout of little thumbnail sketches. It's quite important where you place your climax, and that usually occurs around spread 10. This page here is the spread 9, and they're running along the pier. And the little dog Todd falls over into the water, the climax. And the whole orientation of the book is turned to give the idea that the reader might be down there with the little dog in the water, and up there are the other dogs. I'm doing it all a bit bigger, and I'm thinking not just about the writing, the text integrated with the illustration, but also typographic design. So you see how I had this idea that Todd sits on his tray, tilts it a bit, so that's tilted and is often away down the hill, blocking possibly big, this bit done in a speech bubble. I know the dimension of the book, and this is down a third. It's like having a little book. I scan my picture into the computer, and I can then blow it up proportionally to fit a template of the actual size of the book, which is going to be 250 by 260. Then I work with a typographic designer. So the typographic designer has now come back with the type face here. She's followed my idea of tilting the type, and she's put that in the bubble. So here is an example of having the words, the images and the typeface all feeding into the narrative. I'm now working at a light box. I have my good paper, Ash, and I put it over the printout, and using a hard pencil I trace through. I'm tracing the snowman here. So having got it then onto my watercolour paper, I now need to stretch it. You need a very forgiving paper. This is watercolour paper, Arche, £90, and it's cold press. I wet my paper on the wrong side, so I'm not touching the pencil. And I anchor it down with brown sticky tape, which I cut to size and wet before I put it on. And now I have to leave it to dry. Before I do the original piece of artwork on my big board, I will do a colour rough. I take a scrap of paper and you'll see I'm mixing my colours. They're the colours in the bricks. I'm listing how I mix them, what colours I include, what colours I drop in, and all this is to remind me how I do it. The final bit of artwork then looks like this. This is page 32, which is the final page of the picture book.